Hello, this is Evan from CADHero, and today we are continuing our SOLIDWORKS C# standalone series. In today's lesson, we're going to create a class that makes sure that only one instance of the SOLIDWORKS application exists during the runtime of our application. To do that, we're going to use a design pattern called a Singleton design pattern. And the Singleton design pattern is kind of self-explanatory. It allows, or rather, it makes sure that there's only one single instance of the class itself or an object. In our case, that object is going to be the SLDWorks that's going to represent SOLIDWORKS. So without further ado, let's get to work. So in the Solution Explorer, I want you to go to the project, right-click on it, and then go to Add. We're going to add a class. All right. Let's give this class the name of SolidWorks Singleton.cs. I'm going to click on Add. So this is going to bring the class in the code editor. The first thing that we want to do is to make the class either public or internal. And if we're going to make it public, it's going to be accessible to external assemblies. And if we're going to make it internal, that means that the class will only be accessible to classes inside, or types in general, inside our assembly. So let's make it internal. That's better than putting it as public. And the next thing is to declare a variable of type SLDWorks. This is going to be private static SLDWorks. Let's call it SWApp. Alright, so I'm gonna have to add the statement using SolidWorks interrupt.SLDWorks so we can use the SolidWorks types. Alright, so the private means that this instance will only be accessible from within the scope of this class. Static means that this field is going to exist in all instances of this class. So it's not particular to any instance. And the next thing that we were going to do is going to set the constructor of the class to private. So when we do that, we would not be able to instantiate the class, and that would allow us to basically render the class useless unless we get to the third point, which actually is gonna be another method that's gonna be internal, so we can use it from within our assembly. It's gonna be static, so it's gonna belong to the class and not the instance, and it's gonna return an SLDWorks, and let's call it getApplication, and this is going to return the SolidWorks application. Now the first thing in our method is to be done is to check if the SWApp is either null or not null. So if it's null, it means that our application didn't get the SolidWorks application, or didn't get the SolidWorks application short. We're gonna use a class called Activator. Alright, this is the Activator class. It's gonna create an instance of the SolidWorks application, and this can take a type. So I'm going to use type get type from prog ID, and the prog ID, or the program ID, of SolidWorks is SLDWorks application, and we need to cast this as SolidWorks. Alright, once we get the SolidWorks application, we need to make it actually visible so we can see it. True, and we're going to return SWApp. If the SWApp is not null, then obviously we're going to return SWApp again. All right. Finally, let's make another method that will prove to be useful. Internal, static again, void, dispose. And with dispose, we're going to get rid of the SOLIDWORKS application, or basically close it. So if SWApp is not null, then we're going to make sure that the application exits, so SWApp exit, and we're going to set SWApp to null. All right. Let's go back to the form and let's add a button. All right. This is our button right here. Let's keep it that way and just change the text to get the SolidWorks application. I'm gonna go double click on it. I'm gonna add a field of type SolidWorks right here. We need to add the using statement. All right. And I'm gonna set the SWApp right here to SolidWorks Singleton and get application. All right. That is beautiful. Now let's click on start right here. This is gonna start the application. And something kind of interesting is gonna happen now. As soon as I click, actually nothing happens. So let's do a bit of debugging. Okay, so I'm gonna put a breakpoint right here, and we're gonna see exactly what happens. So as I debug, let's see, does this really get the SolidWorks application? It does get the SolidWorks application, and it's gonna set it to visible. All right. So this only actually means one thing. I do have SolidWorks running, because the interesting behavior occurs when there are no SolidWorks instances in your Windows session. So we're gonna have to go to the task manager actually, and there you go. I'm gonna close these SolidWorks instances. Gonna have to excuse me. Gonna have to do this very quickly. So we don't have any SLDWorks. Sounds good. Let's go back and start our debugging, and let's click on Get Application. I'm gonna remove this thing and click Continue. And as you can see, it freezes. The form freezes. This is because the main thread is actually busy getting the SolidWorks application. It can only do one thing at a time, and while it's busy, it can actually update the user interface. So SolidWorks is launched, and if I bring it down here, let me just resize it down. The form actually is free now. I can just move it around, I can resize it, etc., etc., etc. So this approach of getting the application in what we call an asynchronous fashion does what it's supposed to do, but rather it's not really a good approach. We're gonna try to write another more advanced piece of code or approach rather that's gonna be uh, more appealing and doesn't actually block the main thread. So let me just close SolidWorks and just close the form as well. And let's go back to our Singleton class right here, and let's make a few changes. But rather, let me just copy this method right here, and let's add a comment. Gets SolidWorks, and I'm gonna add another comment right here. Sorry, I've added an entire summary. Rather here dispose of SolidWorks, and I'm gonna add a new comment. Get SolidWorks async. And what this method is gonna do, let's change this name to the async, is gonna launch a new thread that's gonna get the SolidWorks application and bring it back to us without blocking the main thread that it's responsible for updating the graphics or the user form. So we're gonna use a feature of C# 5.0. It's called Async Await. Basically, an async await does is that you can decorate a method with the keyword async like I'm doing just now, and this will have to return either a void or a task of a type. So this is going to return a task of SolidWorks. How are we going to get a task of SolidWorks? Will be through using the method task run. So return await task of SLDWorks run. Just put a lambda expression, sorry, and we're just gonna copy paste this. So this is gonna return a task, so an object that is awaitable. And what's going to happen is that we're gonna go back to the form right here, and we're gonna make a few changes. We'll have to add async to it, and it's going to add await. Change this bit right here. Get application async. So what happens basically is that as soon as we start debugging, this method is going to go to this line. It's gonna invoke get application async, and it's awaiting. So it's gonna invoke this. This is gonna launch a new thread, and it's gonna go back to the main thread right here, waiting for this the method to run asynchronously. When this method returns an SLDWorks type, the method will go back to this point and will resume the execution. And we can simply, I think, we can start. Sorry, we can click on start, and we can click on get the SolidWorks application, and as you can see, I can move the form now. It's not freezing. And that's the desired behavior from using the async await keywords, is that we're able to do what we want to do, but not block the GUI or the user interface. SolidWorks is launched. I'm just going to bring it down here, and I'm going to close it rather, and just close the form again. So you can see the difference between doing it the old-fashioned or doing it the async fashion. We're going to use the async approach in our program. And I think this would bring us to the end of this video with this lesson. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson.